Adventures with Roadkill. That's a horrible title. However, I've got kind of nothing else currently, so Adventures with Death Archetype through Roadkill. We'll go with that for now. Next adventure was a fox driving along, found a fox, looked pretty intact, grabbed it, and it was your atypical fox when you think about a fox. So it was beautiful red orange coat with the gradiented black stripe down the back. Absolutely gorgeous creature. Unfortunately, this guy was pretty thrashed. This was a male fox, and kind of looked like someone had ran over his head and then threw it in reverse and ran over him again. He wasn't quite pancaked, but his head was pretty destroyed, unfortunately. So I hope that this guy's death was swift and immediate, and he felt no pain. One can only hope. But he provided me with an opportunity that I feel is pretty rare. I have kind of, after my experience with the coyote, carcass, trying to attempt to get the pelt, not knowing what I was doing a lot of fumbling and research, and getting the bones instead, I am suddenly provided with a fairly fresh fox, freshly deceased fox, which gave me the opportunity to attempt to gain a pelt, essentially. And it's not that I really want the pelt. I think in somewhere it's an attempt to preserve the beauty of what was, even though the life is gone, which is part of that beauty. In fact, I'd arguably say that the life itself is a key aspect of the form. It is bringing animation to everything and movement. So basically, I had this fox. I did my research. I was thinking, okay, I want to do this as correct as possible. I know that I'm going to fail miserably, quite possibly, because you learn from failure, and this is my first time around, and this is a fairly sizable fox. This fox was about it. I'd say if you were to take essentially a black lab and give it tiny little stumpy feet, that's how big this fox was. It was a big, to my naive eyes, I thought a very healthy fox. The only thing that I could see wrong with this fox, both inside and out when I went through this process, was the fact that he had been hit by a car several times, blunt force trauma to the back of his right leg. Obviously his skull, he had 3 broken legs, and by the time I got to him, and he had quite a few ticks, this poor guy had quite a few ticks around his ears where, he couldn't probably clean very well, which made me obviously a bit squeamish. But, you conquer your fears. So I'm new to this process of skinning and everything. I did a lot of the research and videos and things that I watched. They look like they were either hunters or professionals that have been doing this skinning practice for a very, very long time. Some of them even were going for speed. I think one guy did a whole wolf in 5 minutes, which I had a very interesting emotional reaction. I understand that if you're processing pelts, and that's probably how you get paid per pelt versus per hour, that you want to be able to process pelts quickly and efficiently because it's probably your livelihood. And you're used to it all by now. Nothing that, surprises you really. But for me, because I'm new to this, a little bit squeamish to the thought of innards and muscle tissue and all that jazz, and doing it myself, regardless of wearing gloves or not. I felt almost like it was a disservice to go for speed, but that's also from my perspective and not from the worker perspective. So I knew this was going to take time, and first time around, And I wanted to take my time. I wanted to kind of, do it to the best of my ability, do it with a degree of reverence and definitely awe. I did it definitely with awe. It is incredible if you're willing, if you get the opportunity to do this and you're interested in anatomy and creature physiology and stuff like that. I definitely recommend, doing this experiment of, you know, trying to remove a pelt from a creature. Foxes are apparently pretty easy, or they're on the intro level of pelt removal because they have such thin skin. So I've read, and yeah, I think this was a really good creature for my first time doing this. Will I do it again? I'm not sure. It felt like it took me 3+ hours, so I don't know. And the odds of me finding a fresh creature again, also, don't think it's gonna be of, high odds. Um, so I took the tail off first, and because I just didn't want to deal with it. I don't have the infrastructure or the appropriate tools for skinning process to make this all easier. I did it on the ground. I also should have, in theory, done it in the woods, away from house, because then, in theory, you have the potential of the ticks and the fleas or whatever, the parasite creatures on the creature animal, potentially are easier to track into the house, as well as you are ringing the dinner bell via the smell of decay and decomp by having it near your home. Obviously, I didn't really have the option. It's at least the stigma of I feel like there's a stigma of if you're driving around and you're like, what is that person doing in the woods? They're like, oh my God, they're skinning a creature. Your first thought is not a hunter unless you have your atypical hunter look about the person. So I would guess like the heavy duty coat, maybe with the camouflage. There'd probably be some kind of weapon nearby, maybe a bow, maybe a rifle. Hunting, I don't think, is allowed in my vicinity, in my area. So that also would be possibly a red flag and the confusion. There's a lot of trails here. People would be confused if they saw you skinning something. People are also averse to death in a lot of ways, so if you see innards and stuff, being moved around, and people are going to be like, oh my gosh. The stigma is really huge, and unless it's a male with presumably a ball cap of some variety on, then you're going to be thinking, what is this kid like messing with this creature body for? Like, oh my gosh. So I felt like I didn't have the option. It would have been, yes, I feel a cleaner, smarter thing to do is do it in the forest, where then I could then bury and give back the meat, the muscle, the bones, the innards, right then and there. I feel like almost it's cleaner. Nature can run its course. Likely the coyotes in the area would dig it up and consume what was left, along with the raccoons. Beside the point. I skinned the fox, and it's funny how it's so simple to say, oh, I popped off the tail, oh, I skinned the fox, or that glosses over so much time, emotion, smells, sight. There's so much that I can't. I mean, I'll try to convey some of it, but the smell, for one thing, is very intense and strong, and I'm roughly guessing it was only 3 to 4 days old. It was a very distinctly different smell from the decomp coyote, but it was also thick, heavy. It was very clear that it was it was a this is in progress death happening, or decomposition happening. Death had already occurred, and there's that certain aversion to the smell. If you're not used to it, if you don't deal with these death smells on a regular basis, if it's not like your job or something, there's a certain aversion. And I'm curious, is that just part of our genetics that have an aversion to these smells? Are these smells so strong because that's what they're supposed to do? Either repel, creatures away and saying, don't go here because death is here, or essentially ring the dinner bell for scavenger type creatures and be like, come here, there's food. Interesting, fun, emotional roller coaster. The other thing is, I've never broken any bones. I've never been present when any friends broke their bones either. Now I know what the sound of breaking bones sounds like firsthand. And also, I was squeamish about that because I was thinking, am I squeamish because I'm hearing the breaking of bones, or am I squeamish because I know that I am the one inflicting the breaking of bones? Can't quite tell. Because basically, one of the methods of skinning the fox is you're supposed to remove the feet. In my case, I removed all of the feet, and I also wanted to preserve the paws, so that was my goal. I removed them at the joint. But to remove them, I wasn't just going to take an axe to this guy because I figured that feels very disrespectful. And I'm like, okay, well, I see everyone literally like pop off, like they tug. They cut around the flesh section so that there's no longer that clinging, so you just have the joint. And from there you pull, I guess, violently. For me, I had to kind of wiggle and twist because I'm not as strong. So that was interesting. And like I said, this guy had 3 broken legs, so at one point the joint was fine, but the bone right above it was already compromised. And I had bone grinding on bone sound, so that, I'm like, okay, I see, I hear this. I don't see it, but the way this leg is contorting, it makes me very concerned. So there's a lot of that emotional struggle and visual. Even though this creature is dead, you still have that, like, the same with the ticks. When I finally figured out that this poor dude's ear was just covered in ticks at the base, I was just like, ugh, oh no, and so there's that initial, like, you have to fight yourself emotionally and be like, calm, keep going. So, got the feet off, got the tail off, removed the entire pelt, which was a process. In many of the research and videos that I saw, there was no blood involved. And I initially, by the observation of this creature, it looked like he may have bled out of his mouth, because there was blood dry coated the mouth, so I assumed that's where it went. However, the blunt force trauma appearing on the right side hind leg it looked like the blood had begun to coagulate in that area. So when I did open him up, that was the only spot on the body that there was actually like blood sloshing around and moving and clinging, to itself. It was like coagulating. So I was just like, oh, okay, so when there is damage, this is potential of happening, versus if, this creature was, say, killed maybe by a hunter, there would be less blood. It'd be cleaner. And it's fascinating because even though I had done my research and seen professionals do many pelts and never seen any really blood at all, I think I still came away with the assumption and the thought of, Hollywood movies and storytelling where, there's fountains of blood that come out of every living thing that gets injured in a movie, So Didn't happen. There was no fountains of blood. Thank gosh. But you could see arteries, muscle fibers, bundles, ligaments. The movement of joints was fascinating and beautiful. The way creatures are just designed to function. This guy looked like he was very healthy. He had quite a bit of fat on his body. I think he was a happy, healthy fox right up until he met his fate with that car. Another random note, I was removing the pelt around the belly section, and it appeared that there was some green being transferred over onto the membrane, to the fat connective tissue that was on the pelt itself, on the interior of the skin. So I was thinking, I wonder if that's part of decomp process. I've never seen that in any of the videos of people processing pelts, but they probably do it freshly, whereas this guy was a couple days old. So I'm thinking it's maybe a part of decomp in the stomach region where we have all those acids and everything. Not sure. He was quite green in that area, and I was thinking, gosh, is this going to transfer over to the fur? Who knows? I don't know. Can I remove this? Is this natural? Did he eat maybe some poison? I'm not sure. Did something rupture and then he essentially, his own body poisoned himself? Not sure. Don't know. Didn't open up the guts because I didn't want to. So, interesting, random stuff. It makes sense that it might just be the chemical process of biodegradation in the guts area, because like what normal hunting and preserving of, edible meat in other creatures that you hunt, the first thing to go is the guts more often than not. You remove the gut area so it doesn't contaminate the flesh. So I thought that was interesting, more fun facts. The smell was very pungent, but no, like I said, nowhere as near as the decomping coyote in the water. But it still, I felt like it still permeated everywhere on me. It was in my clothes, like everywhere I went, I had a faint smell of it. And I'm pretty sure it makes total sense that it was, lingering in my lungs. I'm sitting there breathing this. And it was in my hair, I thought, just like the same thought of if you have a bonfire and you're, hanging around a bonfire for a while, then you can walk away and the next morning you smell, campfire in your hair. Or say if you're around a smoker, like that smell is in your hair. So I made sure all my clothes were immediately washed. My shoes stayed outside. All the implements were immediately washed before I came into the house. I went into the house, cleaned my entire self, tops, bottom, toes, everything. In between toes, in my hair, all that, because I was worried about tracking the smell into the home and offending other people's noses. And actually, it's funny because the house is pretty sealed up, and I would walk around the house hours later in the evening, and I would still get faint smells, whiffs of the fox, and I'm thinking, where's this coming from? What have I done wrong in this process that I've tracked it in? Is it in my lungs? Am I, I was coughing a few times. I kind of had a cold at the time. So I was thinking maybe I'm just coughing it up, and then I smell it. And I asked housemate, and they were like, yeah, I smell it too occasionally. And I'm like, still don't know. Moving on. So I have the pelt. It's drying. Like I said, it's still in process. Can't give you the final results. What am I planning to do with it? I actually honestly don't know. I think that, and the bones essentially that I've collected from the coyote and other creatures, they're beginning to pile up. I feel almost, for me personally, it is a disservice to make art with their bones and stuff. But I'm kind of like, well, you got to do something with them. I've got some friends who make art with bones, so maybe it'll go there. If I can't figure out a solution for use for these repurposed items, then maybe I should just bury them. Because I know that the act of creating art for people, like maybe arguably many people in this the witchy community, the act of making art is spiritual. It is that art of expression and everything, and I understand that. I actually feel like it is too. I just for some reason can't get over the idea of using a creature's bones in it yet. And I don't know what it is. I've noticed that I have no problem using fur in art. I've actually done it a few times. I had no qualms about it. I think my only stipulations there was that it was more of an embellishment and not meant to be like a wear and tear item. It wasn't going to get a lot of intense friction or area, use. I seem to have no problems with leather, but then again, I lump that in the fur category. It is a skin essentially, so skin doesn't seem to bother me, but for some reasons bones do, and maybe it's because bones are like the core, the framework of the physical being. So I maybe need to do some writing about that. And the skeleton is very much like a imagery of death or the archetype of death and all that. So maybe I have it, for some reason, put it in a different category. Not sure. If you have any ideas on what you guys use bones for, if you do work with real or fake bones, I'd love to know. I actually don't hear a lot of people talking about using real bones. Then again, maybe I'm just not looking in the correct areas. Usually when I see bones in someone's practice, it's usually conveniently sitting as a placeholder or a representation device on an altar somewhere, or in a spell, and it's usually a skull. Sometimes it's a wing. Sometimes it's like a leg bone of a creature. They're usually very white, clean, and some very rarely. I think I've only seen it one time. Someone put runes on the bone, but I don't think a lot of people work with bones. The only other one random use that I remember someone saying was they had bone powder. They ground down the bones, so I'm presuming they had tiny bones that they ground down, because I can't see myself attempting to grind down a deer bone. Then again, what you probably do is you bake the ever-living crud out of the bones, which makes them very brittle. You bake them for a long enough time, high enough heat, brittle, and then from there, they'll get more crumbly and you can break them down easier. I could see myself using bone powder, but like I said, I have so many bones that I don't have enough uses for bone powder to do that with the bones. So I got the fox, preserved all the feet. Hope that goes well. What am I going to do with the feet? Again, I don't really know. I'm thinking make talismans or, meaningful gifts out of them. I was also given the opportunity to find deer feet. I have 2 deer feet now, which was incredible. Fun fact, hopefully this doesn't gross anyone out when they eat this particular onions again, but deer tendon in the front and the back of the foot, much like our movement of our feet. It was fascinating. I was able to move the foot in its natural movement, just like we would move our feet up and down, and it was just beautiful. The design's amazing, and my gosh, is that joint so strong? Oh, it is so strong. Me trying to break that was quite an ordeal. Deer feet, deer ankles are incredibly strong, or I'm incredibly weak. Either way, however you'd like to take it. I like to think they're incredibly strong. I kept the tendons because the tendons are, it's sinew, it's often dried and then used as nature's fiberglass. Fun fact. I thought it was pretty awesome. And I'm not sure again what I'm going to use it for. But the tendons on the front and the back of this deer leg, ankle, above the ankle, it looks like those onions that you will have in your bowl of noodle or your ramen that get diced up. They usually start at the base like a white with a root, and then they gradient up and become this beautiful green, like, I don't want to say chives because I don't think they're chives. But when you dice up this onion, the tendon was the color of the white area of this onion, and you know how the onion has ring inside of ring inside of ring inside. The tendon was like that too, and it had that slight sheen, that glisten that also the onion has. It almost like ever so slight iridescence. But I thought that was just so magnificent and beautiful and strong, and I was just like, wow, it looks like an onion. So anyways, yes, so all the feet are preserved, or in the process of being preserved. Hopefully all that goes well. And there's a particular joint at the ankle where it's the shin bone, I do believe, connecting to the ankle, that apparently gets jewelry made out of it because it's such a unique shape. It almost looks like it's not bone. It's not what you would imagine human bone to look like. It's curved, and it looks very clearly almost like gosh, it's so hard to describe. It's spherical. It has these beautiful spherical, Google it if you, I think that would, picture worth 1,000 words. Google it. But it's often used for jewelry, because it's such a unique and beautiful shape. It's very spherical looking, and it's mirrored, like the symmetry on this. Oh, it's beautiful. It's a perfect joint hinge, and you're like, this is natural in nature. This is mind blowing. So, yeah, more fun little notes. Like I said, a lot of this, I think, is the process. I'm supposed to go through the process of encouraging the decomposition, and more than it is the retrieval of the pelt or the bones. Mostly, I believe that because I don't know what to do with the products that I get at the end, So maybe that's just the whole point. We're supposed to go through the process and then just bury everything at the end after going through the process. I don't know. I need to find a use for these items, though. If anybody wants some deer bone, some fox, some coyote, ethically repurposed, all of the creatures that I work with are found. Most of it is roadkill. There's quite a bit up here. I've actually passed by a few skunks and thought, oh, wouldn't a tail be wonderful? A skunk tail, I feel, would be just magical. The only problem is, housemates, skunk smell. I personally don't seem to have a big aversion to the skunk smell, but that's also only what I've smelt by driving past a skunk versus being in the physical, proximity of a skunk smell. So, can't say 100% for sure until it actually happens. But I think that would be what would be my roadkill wish list? I'd say a fresh raccoon, and then a fresh skunk. I think a whole deer is asking for too much, and a lot more than I could handle at this point, because a deer is for me, a sizable animal. But anyways, that's my adventures with the Death Archetype through roadkill. If you live in an area where you can do this roadkill thing, exploration, I highly recommend it. Throw a mega large trash bag in your car so that you can safely grab, I'd say double bag it just in case you have any fluid leakage from your creature. Although all the creatures that I've encountered, I've never had any fluid leakage, thankfully. Although I'd say if there is fluid leakage, leave it. It's probably just better off that you find something drier or something that is more intact still. And also, I mean, I have the option of doing this. Thankfully, I've discussed with my housemates, discussed with the neighbors that I'll be up in the woods burying random dead animals that I find on the side of the road. You get that groundwork laid first. Not everyone can just go and pick up a creature and then bring it home and then bury it. And then, where do you live? Does the earth freeze over? Do you have coyotes or wolves in your area that are going to come and dig this up in your front yard? Where should you bury it? Do your research if you're going to do this. And lay the ground foundation of talking to people if you need to, let them in on your curiosity about this, that it's quite sane. I'm doing this primarily also because, the elephant in the room of people don't like dealing with death. They don't like talking about death, anything related to it. And I am trying to deal with my own elephant in my own room revolving around death through this method. I'd say one of the simplest steps that you could do is pick up a creature, go to wilderness area, and then just bury it. That, I think, is also a very good, gentle step into working, like hands-on with, the archetype of death through roadkill too. And it doesn't really involve a bunch of other people. You just need to make sure that, can you dig up and bury something in an area? And do I have a shovel? And do I have a plastic bag? I'd say throw in some gloves, just, for the cherry on top, preferably waterproof. It's interesting experience. And I always have this, massive reverence and awe for seeing these creatures in person that I otherwise would never be able to see up close and in person. I'd be able to see them from afar and be like, oh, cool, it's a raccoon, that's a big one. And then they scurry off. But being able to see that creature in front of you and just be like, wow, it's just awesome and beautiful and mind-blowing. And then being like, I'm going to help Mother Nature out a bit and just pop you in the ground, allow her to take her course a little bit quicker. So, that's the adventure with the fox. Alrighty, thank you for hanging in there with me on this strange roadkill adventure. Until we meet again, safe travel, universe walkers, and if you can, I highly recommend the experience of grabbing some roadkill and burying it. It's a very interesting experience. Alrighty, have a good one.